Okay, it looks like we're ready to start. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bud Mortensen. I'm the Director of University Relations and your MC for this Provost's Town Hall. Today, we'll begin by respectfully acknowledging that UBC Okanagan is situated in the territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation and their peoples. And some of you may be joining us today from many places near and far, and we acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands as well. Let me quickly go over the format for the afternoon for the Town Hall. We're going to use the Zoom Q&A features, and if you've joined other town halls, you may be familiar with those tools. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. If you click on that, it will open a window that allows you to ask your questions, and you can also vote on questions to promote them to the top of the list. And we'll be asking the questions that float up to the top of the list. We'll begin this afternoon with remarks from Professor Ananya Mukherjee-Reed, Provost and Vice President Academic, Heather Berenger, Chief Librarian and Associate Provost Learning Services, and Michelle Loughton, Interim Associate Vice President Students. Following the opening remarks, I'll be back and I'll pose your questions to the panel. We'll be joined this afternoon by many of our Okanagan Deans and Associate Provost Strategy, Professor Michael Burgess. And now, I'll turn things over to Professor Ananya Mukherjee-Reed.
So, thank you, and good afternoon to all of you, or whatever part of the day, wherever you are. I will go through a shortish slide deck. All three of us have a little bit of information to share. And these are three types of information, I think, right now. Some of what we know, some of what we know kind of partially, and some things that we don't know. So the purpose is to present this information to you and then really seek your feedback and suggestions. Part of it may be today, part of it may be after, by email or any other means that you think it would be feasible. As Bud already mentioned, the deans are here to answer some questions if you have. Mike Burgess is also here, and the three of us, of course. So let me start with the principles as we are planning towards fall. And it's a very active and ongoing discussion. So principles are always helpful when there are so many unknowns and uncertainties. So the first principle is, of course, the safety and well-being of students, staff, and faculty as per our public health guidelines, as well as our own constraints. That is really a non-negotiable. The second principle is to deliver UBC to our students, wherever they are, and the best that we can. We can't do everything as in the same way that we would like to, but we would do the best we can. Achieve our education and research mandates and everything that implies, and to continue our commitments to reconciliation and to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So these are the very overarching guiding principles that we are using. Some operational principles when we are actually trying to make operational decisions. The first is we have to minimize pressure on the physical infrastructure. We have to minimize the number of people on the campus at one time until we have different public health guidelines. And the principle here is no one is safe unless all of us are safe. So we are not in a situation where we can just make decisions individually. We have to think about the collective good every step of the way. We need to minimize the silos and divisions with which we normally work. We are one campus, one team. And the principle of equity, fairness, and empathy, another non-negotiable. And I read this somewhere, I can't remember, when a crisis hits, lead with humanity, because everything else is uncertain. So what do we already know about planning for September to December 2020? We know that international students can take courses online in the fall. There are some new immigration guidelines which we have to carefully understand, but they can start if they want to. There will be no in-person classes for year one in the fall. For year 2 also, no in-person classes except for nursing labs. Year 3 and 4 also primarily online, with a small number of courses in person in the sciences and in nursing. So what does this mean? How many total sections are going to go online? Well, we don't clearly know. We are working on this, but just as an an estimate, here we have the number of sections in the past term, immediate past term, and at all the 4 levels. So you can see that these are roughly, if it's comparable, roughly the numbers of the courses that will go online, and about a small percentage will stay in person for face-to-face delivery. And one question I got is, what are the guidelines for face-to-face delivery? We are developing those guidelines because, again, this has to take into account many different factors, and we will have them more publicly discussed as soon as there is some more clarity. And here I'm referring only to undergraduate sections. The graduate courses are still under discussion. What we do not know yet: how will graduate courses be taught? We know about some courses that the departments and programs have already decided could go online, and some other are in discussion. What is the capacity of residences? And by capacity here, we mean what is the capacity when we allow for the public health guidelines for safe physical distancing and load and common areas and so on. So that work is ongoing, and we also have to think about then, if the capacity is limited, what would be our guiding principles of determining who has access to the residences? Some students are already there. They could not go home because flights stopped, so they are going to be there in the residences. And we have to think of additional principles as we go along. And then the biggest unknown is, will there be a second outbreak? And as you know, that a lot of discussion is going on about that and what universities should do in preparation for that. So that's something we don't know, but we would be following the public health discussions closely to understand how we should align our actions. On the numbers, what do we know as of now? So what I have in these 2 very short tables is the number of students who have accepted our offer of admission as of this morning. Now, we don't know yet how many will register. Students are under many different challenging conditions. So their exact choices are now not known to us. And in any case, every year there is something we call a summer melt. And we try to prepare for that by through different strategies. But this year, there are a few more uncertainties. But you will see that the first table shows us our top choice acceptances for all years. So the domestic is 1745 students have accepted our offers as of today. And the target is about 2,500. And for international, 627 and 703. And then in the following table, I have the numbers for year 1, just because the year 1 new to UBC students are, trying to make probably very big decisions right now, particularly international students. So I wanted to just all of you to have a sense of where we are with that. So for year 1, under accepted, we have 1339, and our target there was 1846. And for international, the acceptance as of this morning is 581, and our target was 569. So these hold out some promises, plus I think you already know that our summer registration are higher, and summer registration is actually higher everywhere in Canada. And I think the reason is that students are trying to optimize their time and progress as fast as they can. And, this is one certainty that they are acting on. And also, big thank you to faculty and staff who have actually put the expanded summer offerings online, and students have responded very positively to that. So with all of this going online, obviously means that we need a lot of support for faculty and students to begin this online journey. Of course, we're not beginning. There were some online supports and online courses, but the scale and complexity has suddenly become a lot bigger. And so there are already many different activities that are going on inside faculties. My office is developing a number of campus-wide initiatives to support both faculty and students. These initiatives are to support faculties. They are not independent initiatives of the provost, because at this time, the academic decision-making, it has to have the most priority. And I am taking my role and my office's role only to support and not to have independent initiatives. So there will not be calls from my office for individual submissions for grants like you have for the All 2040. If there are particular needs, I'm hoping to hear it through the deans from the faculty so that we can figure out how best to support them through a campus-wide framework. Heather is going to talk more about the specific initiatives. And so you can give us some suggestions and feedback on that. So one side is faculty. Of course, the other side is how to support our students for online learning. And we are collecting lots of ideas to decide on 2 or 3 priorities. But what we already know is that there are technology is often a barrier. And so we are working on a student technology grant program. And we've also heard in our discussions with the faculty and the academic teams that technology support in general is a concern. And so we are looking at how to explore and how to expand our technology supports more generally, including a potential redesign of the peer technology assistance program to provide a broader range of student support. And we are very aware that technology is only one piece of the issue. Remote learning student success in remote learning might require a lot more proactive measures. And so again, a lot is happening in the faculties, and we are consulting widely through a working group to determine the 2-3 priorities for support campus-wide. And we will definitely appreciate your feedback on determining those 2 or 3 priorities. So I will stop here now and pass it on to Heather, and then we will continue with Michelle, and then we'll go to Q&A. So Heather, on to you.
Thanks very much, Ananya, and thanks to everyone for being here. I guess I'd like to just maybe start with a couple of important acknowledgements and principles in discussing the initiatives I'm going to talk about. So first, everything that has been done to date is the result of a tremendous amount of collaboration from a number of individuals that are too exhaustive to name, though I am going to name a few. And I'm very grateful for their time, their expertise, and their hard work in challenging circumstances. That includes all of the faculty who survived our period of emergency remote teaching, as one of my colleagues calls it, and are now engaged in future planning efforts, and our staff who have gone above and beyond to provide support in every way possible, saying nothing of our students who are trying to adapt to the best of their ability. And second, as Ananya alluded to, I think this is really just a first look. I don't think that in my last 8 years at UBC, I've ever been involved in convening so many task forces and working groups and brainstorming sessions as in the last 8 weeks. So there are so many topics under discussion that are just not at the stage for a prime time conversation like this. But I'm looking forward to fleshing those out in future conversations as we get a better idea of the direction. And I'm again indebted to the many, many people who have donated time and expertise to these groups and tasks. So To give you a sense of where things stand today, this slide presents a bit of a visual overview of some of our initiatives and how they ladder. As Ananya said, we're pleased to provide some support for coordination and administration in the Provost Office, but these initiatives are truly in support of the faculties based on emerging needs. So if I start at the bottom of the diagram here, let me just speak a bit about our expanded Learning Technology Rovers program. The Provost Office and Center for Teaching and Learning engaged in a pilot collaboration with faculties and schools to embed these LTRs in their undergraduate students who can provide online one-on-one learning technology supports to both faculty members and students who are learning online during the summer months. Those LTRs are providing critical support for online teaching and learning, and they also provide meaningful employment opportunities for our students at a critical time. And I'm very grateful to the Co-op Office, CTL, all of our faculties and schools for supporting this initiative. I also really want to call out Laura Prada from the Provost Office and Janine Hertz from CTL for outstanding program coordination on this with a very tight timeline. So these students are just being deployed now, and we're starting to explore what the future might look like for those LTRs now that we know more about fall campus plans, working with the libraries, CTL, IT services, and the ABP students portfolio. Moving up the ladder here, I'm also really excited to speak to our Learning Design Interns program, which is an initiative that will provide graduate students with an opportunity to gain knowledge and skills in learning design, applied to their disciplinary context, while enhancing support for faculty members who are transitioning to online and blended learning. So these graduate students will be provided with a foundational training in learning design concepts by a team of faculty members and senior education experts. And through the summer, they'll be mentored by that faculty and expert team and provided with ongoing workshops to continue to grow their skills. These students are currently being selected within the faculties. Their training begins on June 1st, and I'm really pleased to thank Cindy Bourne and Peter Newberry for their leadership in getting this kicked off. Our next step is sending out invitations to a working group for academic planning representatives from faculties focused on online learning implementation. And the reason for this is we want to try to learn more about the efforts taking place at the faculty and department level, so we can try to understand what other supports might be beneficial. And those invitations will be going out within the next several days. Next slide, please. Thank you. As I run through some of these other initiatives that are providing or planned to provide some direct to faculty support, I cannot under any circumstances not signal the tremendous contributions that have been made by the members of our Center for Teaching and Learning staff in a really difficult situation. I want to thank them quickly on a first name basis. Peter, Janine, Vanya, Brian, Martine, Julie, Angela, thank you. Your amazing students, Kirsten and Brianne, thank you. Your contribution over the past weeks has just been above and beyond. I also want to take a second and thank our fantastic library team who have valiantly pivoted online to offer virtual consultations, in-class teaching, Canvas modules, copyright support, electronic collections, things that faculty members have needed in planning their courses. And I'll just quickly highlight a few things here on the slide. One is this emerging collaboration with CTLT in Vancouver on an online teaching program that will include self-paced online modules, a series of workshop options, and opportunities for one-on-one consultation between faculty members and educational experts engaged in course design. There are also discipline-focused opportunities for consultation and learning, and you can contact Peter Newberry and the CTL to discuss these. And some enhanced support that's coming for considerations around inclusion and accessibility in the online classroom. There's more to come on that in coming weeks, but I thought it was really important to have that on the radar in this forum. Next slide. Thank you. Some deeper thinking about how we can provide support to faculties for teaching assistants moving into a new environment. Again, more can come on this in coming weeks. We're just getting started. support in thinking about transition for laboratory learning during this time of transition. And here I'd like to really thank Michelle Lamberson from the Provost Office for her insight into this area. Michelle has been a critical part of overall planning and program design in the transition period, and we wouldn't be where we are right now without her contributions. So thank you, Michelle. And a shout out for the CTL's current teaching online learning community, which is meeting on Fridays, where else but on Zoom. And if this is something of interest to you, I'd encourage you to reach out to Janine, who can welcome you to that group. We obviously still have a long road, and there are so many discussions to have, taking large classrooms to the online classroom, academic integrity, experiential learning, undergraduate research, spaces and facilities. These are some of the things that I've heard about from many of you. There are so many people working hard to explore and contextualize those ideas, and I would very much welcome direct feedback about how we can better support your efforts. I'm also very thankful to Michelle Loughton, who's our next presenter, and to her team for working so closely with us on many joint initiatives for students. I'll leave those to her to expand upon and pass this over to her now.
Thanks, Heather. Excellent. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be involved in this town hall. I think it's a really valuable forum to communicate our current thinking and planning. So I'll speak for a few minutes and aim to give you a good understanding of what our strategy is going into the fall. So much of the work that we do in the AVP students is deeply connected with faculties. So what has been helping our decision making at this point is learning about the educational plans that the faculties have been developing over the past few weeks. So what I'll focus on and what I'm going to talk about is what is known to us, so the areas where we've made some decisions, and I'll also talk about what is unknown at the moment and really acknowledge that there's some pieces that we still need to work forward, as both of you have talked about already. And my hope really is to give you all some visibility into the next steps of what our planning is. So within our unit, and as a portfolio as a whole, we've undergone an exercise of planning where we've established our programs and services that are essential to the student experience. Our priority is to focus on essential programs right now and ensure that they are accessible and high quality. So because we know that the academic courses will primarily be online, we're also focused on putting our essential services and programs online. So we've organized those as a team around 4 priority areas. I think that's up on the slide: orientation and transition, academic support, practical learning, and health and well-being. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I've put these all up here. I'm not going to go into complete detail on all of these. I just, in the interest of transparency and visibility of what we're focusing on, I wanted everybody to be able to lay eyes on each of these 4 bucket areas that we're focusing on. Many of these things have already been in the works for months online, such as immigration advising. We've got our UBC 101 or online orientation already up and running as students get admitted. A lot of the other pieces, though, you'll notice we've never done these online. So our commitment right now is to be offering these robust supports, orientation and transition supports, in an online virtual environment. That includes all of the things that you see here. The athlete orientation, we're hoping to do online and in person. And we've got, it's really critical that we work closely with our faculty partners on Create and Jumpstart, as we always have. Those are key transition programs for students. And in the past, they really have focused in areas around academic transition, but also social and emotional connections for students. So those are going to be key components of our planning as we go forward, is how do we try and recreate that orientation and transition experience and ensure that our students feel a sense of connection and belonging to the institution, even though they won't be at the institution. Next slide. Thank you. Academic support. So we've received a lot of questions about this. And again, on this slide, these are the ones that are essential. Doesn't mean that we're not going to branch out to more, but these are the ones that we're focusing a lot of resourcing on right now. You'll see on the bottom bullet there, the Student Learning Hub, and that's a partnership that AVP Students has with the library, offering tutoring, supplemental learning, writing services. This is an area I think we're going to have a strong investment in to show students that we're there for them, that online learning might be a challenge, but we are going to be supporting them through this, along with our faculty partners, to have a really good online learning experience and ensure that our students don't fall through the cracks. DRC exam coordination, our DRC office, and all of our offices actually, academic advising, career advising, our specialists in Aboriginal programs and services have all been working with students. They've been very, very busy, and I'm really grateful for their service. They've been seeing students right from the second that we pivoted in March, and they've been having online appointments with them. So everything you see on this slide will continue to be offered and will grow actually as we hit the fall. Next slide, thank you. Practical learning. This is a really important component of a student's university experience. They often come to university, as everyone knows, not just for academic learning, but to be involved in their community, to grow and change professionally throughout their university journey. So we're really committed to offering career exploration and development, continuing with our advising. We are committed to doing curricular community service learning, which is for you faculty members that have a curricular component of service learning in your course. We are still able to engage in those, in that planning with you. Students still want resume workshops and LinkedIn and virtual career fairs, and the work study program actually did continue this summer, where it was feasible to have students working in a virtual environment. So as I said, there's going to be areas that we're going to learn more about as we continue our planning, and we can add to that as well as we go. And the next one. Health and well-being. So this is a huge component of all of our wellness, actually, as we've been talking about. And so what we're looking at right now for athletics and rec, while we don't have the plans firmly in place, on the radar is that our recreation and physical activity programs will continue. Some have been online, but we're certainly hoping that our hangar and our gym and other spaces will be open. Our athletic therapy clinic and athletic therapy student trainer placements will continue. In health and wellness, I don't know if everybody knows this, but the office has remained open. They do walk-ins, they have counseling services online, but the clinic has been open and seeing students, and will continue to do that. And well, we have a lot still unknown basically about the students that will be there in the fall. We do know that students are living on campus now, and students will continue to live on campus. So there's those services that we will continue to provide for them, including our well-being services around social connection, wellness, and well-being being offered virtually. And as always, our office responds in a 24-hour crisis response mode where necessary. And the continuation of health and well-being. So the sexual violence support groups and individual support services are still being offered, as well as training for responding to disclosure and sexual violence and trauma-informed practice. So all of those, the team is working really hard to move those online and continue that we can still meet all of the learning outcomes that we need to meet in an online environment. And I'll just say, it says I will now pass it back to Ananya, but I won't, just for a second. I would just want to say what is unknown at this point in time that I really want to acknowledge is that we don't necessarily know what our students need. I think we are making a lot of really good assumptions, and I think there's some data out there that StatsCan and other institutions are gathering around what students need or what students' concerns are. But we have a really diverse student body that's really spread all over Canada and the world. And so at this point in time, we don't have a lot of information around what their personal needs or their support needs will be. And my understanding is that OPER is deploying a survey to get a greater understanding of what this might look like, and that'll be in the next few weeks. And in the meantime, I know we're offering supports in terms of the Keep Learning site. We want our students that are accepting their offers of admission, or our students that are continuing, to know that they have a place that they can go to look, to know that they're supported. So, and the other unknown that we really have at this point is around when we're going to be able to offer really robust programs and services in person. And I'm saying that just for everybody, even on my team, to know that we don't yet have a plan. We don't want people going back to the office thinking that they might be offering advising or other programs in person. We might be, but right now we don't know that. And so we're going to wait for that collective approach of the university to really figure out what the next steps are, and then be able to begin our planning and deployment from there. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you. And I will turn it back to Ananya now.
So thank you, Michelle and Heather. And before I give you some concluding comments, people have asked me if 2 hours is too long. Well, we'll find out. But if you have questions, it's questions and feedback. We would love to hear as soon as possible so that we can incorporate that into the planning process. So what are our next steps? So, we had a pandemic planning task force that is now going to slightly morph into what we would call a Restart UBC Okanagan team. And that is currently in the process of being established, although the work is going on. And the goal there would be to, of course, restart, but there is also a hashtag that I like a lot, which is Build Back Better. And it is connected to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is something an area in which I work on. And the idea there is we just, whatever we do, we try to become more aware of the issues we needed to address and address them now. Right? So I really like that idea of not only just recovering and putting back where everything was, but try to actually make it better. And then, of course, the goal of bringing UBC to students wherever they are, and however we can, and faculty, what you teach and how we can support your teaching is going to be the most important success factor for our students. And so that's going to be a very important collective goal. And the deans and the academic leadership have met with the administrative services teams. There was a meeting yesterday which was basically to communicate the online teaching plans to the teams that need to know to do the planning. And of course, these meetings will continue because, again, we need to really work closely with the academic leadership to make sure that the teaching and supports you need for your student and faculty are there. So more information on this will be forthcoming as these plans solidify. And the most important thing, again, I cannot emphasize this enough, we need your suggestions and feedback, and of course kudos if applicable. I meant to say if, it wasn't kudos is applicable. And so please write to Heather and Michelle and Janine for me, and there's any other way that you want to communicate through your heads or deans, please do, because this is this is a work that needs everybody. As I said in the beginning, that we are one campus, one team. And I don't know if you've had a chance to read my newsletter. There are a lot of thank yous due to a lot of people, actually everyone. And I've said this before, I see everybody coming forward with their leadership to offer ideas, to take on tasks. And it is really very inspiring to see us coming together in this way. That doesn't mean we've solved all our problems, but we at least have a way forward. So I will stop there and pass it back to Bud for the Q&A.
Very good. Well, thank you, Ananya. Thank you to our other presenters as well. So we'll go into the Q&A portion of the town hall. We have started to see some questions in the question window. Please remember there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, that window will open. You can enter your questions, and you can upvote other questions as well. So we have one that is the front runner in being upvoted. So I'll just dive right in. This one is a question related to the bigger context. I and colleagues have been reading articles that highlight how the pandemic has affected students in terms of the space in which they live. Some students don't have a suitable space to work in. Other students are not safe at home. For these students, the ability to leave home and study at the university was crucial to their well-being. Is the university going to make it possible for students in these situations to be present in person at the university? For example, would we provide them with an opportunity to book study rooms or classrooms, respecting social distancing, so that they can be safe and set up for success?
So let me address that. So this is absolutely a part of the planning, including in the priorities of access to campus. So we accept that following public health guidelines, everybody cannot be on campus at the same time, all the time as we wish. what would be the priorities for access, right? So these are the criteria we are considering, remembering, of course, that some of the needs are unstated, right? Students may not always feel comfortable stating the needs. So we are trying to see how we can best, first of all, prioritize the principles for access, and then how we can have serve students who are in these kinds of needs. Just before this meeting, I came from a meeting with the advisors in Michelle's team, the student advisors, and this was exactly the question that was raised. So we will be working very closely with the advisors and the recruitment teams who are directly talking to students to see how this should be included in our planning. There are no easy answers, but clearly a prioritizing of principles according to the guiding principles must take place.
Very good. The next question is, do we have comparable data to the tables that you showed earlier from Vancouver regarding the actual versus targeted student numbers?
Yes, we have that data, and Vancouver is exceeding right now in both domestic and in international. I mean, we're not in the targets. We're comparing to where we were last year. So Vancouver is now better in both domestic and international, and we are up in the domestic, not yet up in the international. But because our numbers are relatively small, you will see that the gap between our target and accepts doesn't look as scary as we thought it would. I suppose we can add some, I don't know if we can add something to the presentation, but certainly those numbers are available and can be made available, yes.
Very good. And another question is rising rapidly to the top. Starts with a statement that it would be great if we could have our course shells in Canvas ASAP, and so that they can start to build them out. When will they be available?
I don't have an answer to that. Heather, do you, or could we answer that, send an answer to somebody or announce that somehow?
Sure. So I happened to just get a message that the aim is to have these available for the end of May, but I promised I wouldn't make a promise. It's in construction now. People are working on it right now. So aim for end of May. So June sounds like a safe answer.
Very good. We're hearing from students who are expressing concerns about their winter 19 term 2 classroom and end of term experiences. Is there a mechanism for students to provide feedback or express their concerns and or share their positive experiences with the university regarding that term, the winter 2019 term?
Yeah, so I have got this question a couple of times, and I have asked students that they could write directly to me, and a couple have, and I have those responses. So there were reasons that we did not have for that that semester with the sudden transition. We didn't have the evaluations, but students can absolutely write to me directly for their concerns or their or their positive experiences, and I will pass it on as necessary and try to address the concerns as best as I can.
Very good. And Anya, this is another question directed to you. Online delivery is clearly the rational approach considering constraints of COVID-19. It's concerning that at least some faculties are increasing class sizes for delivery of these online courses, including fourth-year courses. There is reasonable position that larger online class sizes will challenge the operational principle of being proposed of delivering teaching to the best we can. What's your perspective on that issue of having larger class sizes with online courses?
So this is not something on which I can have a perspective. This is an academic decision, a faculty course program-based decision. I'm wondering if any of the deans want to take it on. I guess not.
Sorry, I just had a hard time getting to my mute button. Yeah, I agree with you, Ananya, that it'll be dependent upon program and what individual program leads and heads and instructors are comfortable in terms of dealing with this. I know that some of the courses offered in the barber school this summer have lifted, have been quite happy to be able to lift caps on some of their courses, frankly, because the demands on those courses were so high. They were happy to be able to offer those courses to students. So I think the decision-making process really needs to involve the nature of the demand and what's possible for the particular course and the particular discipline, and what our technologies allow us to deliver in an effective manner.
Mm-hmm. So my perspective is student success and faculty success, and there's whatever works with that is good, but there is no, if the question was, is there a campus level decision that because we can offer everything online, let's just remove all caps on class size? No, the answer is no.
Roger, did you have something to add?
Sure, if I may, just quickly on that, please, Bud. I think one of the things to bear in mind is, I mean, clearly it varies across subject areas and so on as to just what the virtual delivery is going to look like. I think that one of the things, certainly in management, that we've adopted the notion of is that whereas if we were conventional face-to-face on campus, we might schedule a particular course, for example, so as if, I don't know if you are just making up numbers here, but if you're dealing with kind of 240 students, you might deliberately schedule 3 groups of 80 or something. One of the things we're taking the view of in management is that when you go virtual, you can actually step back and actually rethink, and in some ways, many ways you do need to rethink exactly how you want to deliver. So certain aspects of the material might well be delivered, in the example I've just given, to all 240. Other aspects are likely to be dealt with, addressed in smaller groups. What size would they be? That needs to be addressed in the context of the opportunities that virtual environments throw up and thought through. That's one of the reasons why I think it's really important that we identify as quickly as possible what courses are being offered and being done online, and give as much preparation time for faculty as we possibly can to address those changes.
Thanks for that. So there's another question regarding final exams or formal exams. Will there be latitude for formal or final exams normally required for the 100 and 200 level courses for online courses? I understand there is language in the Senate for exceptions. So it's really a question about the latitude that would be available for those.
Yes, again, one of the deans have to answer that question because these are academic decisions according to Senate policy.
Hi, Bryce here. I'll try and answer. It just came up in a town hall that we hosted for CCS right before this one, and there is language that allows for exception to be made to that Senate policy. The language is for sound academic reasons, and I think that there was quite a bit of sort of, let's say, emergency motivated sort of invocation of the latitude of that provision within the current Senate regulations in the recently concluded term. But I think it's an interesting question in terms of the carriage of Senate over a question like this. And perhaps it's worth indicating in this forum and through this forum to our members of Senate who are here today that maybe it should be taken up as a campus consideration. I mean, do we wish to have a kind of formal consideration and perhaps Senate review of that particular policy and others that might be perhaps not the best policies to have in place at this time in terms of the kind of teaching year that we're anticipating coming up? So, I mean, there is that language, Sue. There is some latitude. I think the deans do have some discretion here, but I do think that it is worth considering as an academic community if we want to take some of these things up in turn and come up with a campus policy that makes sense and can be applied equally and fairly across the different units.
Thanks for that, Bryce. We have a question for our chief librarian. I think our chief librarian is best placed to answer this one. And it is, when can we expect physical access to the library, perhaps even just a point librarian who could retrieve books from stacks or or the UBC Vancouver libraries?
I appreciate the opportunity to answer that question because I've heard it quite a bit. So, and I also appreciate the reference to physical access. Just as a reminder, most of our services are continuing virtually and about 80% of our collections are available online. But I know for humanities scholars, that is a great difficulty and test right now. In good news, as part of the research resumption plan, we are in fact working on a curbside pickup. It's not quite curbside pickup, but a pickup service so that materials could be retrieved from the stacks and picked up on campus. We are working closely with UBC Vancouver libraries. I will be honest and say it may be that Okanagan collections are available before requesting collections delivery from Vancouver is available. There could be a lag there just because of the logistics. And I think we are looking at a closed stack situation for quite some time, just in terms of cleaning and that sort of thing around facilities for sort of book browsing. So we may be looking at a closed stacks, but at least availability of print collections on demand for pickup in the very near term. I would like to say June. We're shooting for June 1st, but it may be a little bit further into June before we're able to offer.
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Henry, I believe Chief Medical Health Officer in British Columbia, has publicly stated that there has never been a pandemic in history that hasn't been followed by a second wave. Given this can be reasonably expected, should we soon be ensuring that we have online courses for students in term 2, for those that would prefer to avoid committing to being on campus because of health concerns for a full academic year?
I assume that one's for me.
Sure.
So, you know, this is again a matter of active discussion, and what the university does will have to follow again the public health guidelines. So, so far you saw from the Premier's presentation that it says online and hybrid, and that's what we are working with. But I agree with you that very soon we have to have a decision on that. But you know, we can't make the decision till we have the guidelines. But the discussion with the deans is ongoing as to what is our range of options again for term 2. How does it? You know, we cannot plan term 1 entirely disconnected from term 2. So that's where we are, but I think we are still not ready for a full decision to be announced and worked on.
Right, and a related question is there a deadline where the term 2 decisions really need to be made by?
You know, the deadline is kind of as soon as possible, because for 2 reasons. Faculty, those of you who need to teach, need to know, and students need to know. But on the other hand, there is, you know, this is an implication for the entire economy and society of British Columbia. If universities are going to be online for an entire year, it means it has a lot of ripple effect on lots of other considerations. So that's why even the pedagogical decisions have to be thought of in a slightly broader context, but everybody's actively working on this question as well.
So over this past term, there was an approval from Senate for credit D-fail status for courses in the prior year. Will any alternate grading criteria such as credit D-fail status be available for students in the coming year, either for all courses or for a more restrictive set of circumstances?
So I think, if I'm not mistaken, and the deans can correct me, that was passed for the summer, up to the summer. And then we might have to reconsider that. But again, I will ask one of the deans if you have been thinking about that and where we need to take that next step. Perhaps we need to go back to the Senate committee and then Senate for considering the term 1 at least.
Very good. We have a question from Michelle. We know that substance abuse has increased with the pandemic, and the opioid crisis in BC continues. How will we address student needs related to substance use? It wasn't specified on the list, but is that something that is actively in discussion?
She's right, Joan Batarov. It's not specifically called out on the list. It's on the list, it would be under counseling services. So we are still supporting students that have substance abuse issues that they're addressing. We didn't on our planning of essential programs and services necessarily focus on the subsets of issues that we're focusing on for students. The community is also providing supports for students and community members in general. And as our students are dispersed throughout British Columbia, Canada, and the world right now, we're doing our best to connect students to the resources in their community that they might need in terms of substance abuse counseling or support in other ways. So it is important, and it's not something that we're forgetting at this point. It's embedded in the support that we're already offering students.
Very good, thank you. Ananya, will course evaluations continue during COVID-19 or post-pandemic?
Course evaluations?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only, if you're referring to the last semester where because of the sudden online transition, it was suspended, that was only for that term. It is happening again in the summer, and it's going to happen in the normal circumstances as it does. There is no, I haven't yet had a proposal from anywhere to not continue. Mind you, there is this is separate from COVID. There is a working group and discussions on the tool, on the evaluation tool, and some questions related to that. That process will continue, and whatever is the outcome, that will be accommodated. But there is no plan to suspend evaluations just for COVID.
Very good. I see the questions are bouncing around as people are voting them up. Can you speak to the return to work protocol being discussed for faculty and staff on campus, and when that might roll out?
What was the last part? When that might?
About when it might roll out, when we might see the protocol for returning to work.
I actually cannot tell you exactly when. Right now the directive very much is that the work that can be done from home is to be done from home. So you know that we have the public health guidelines about a phased return and a no surprise approach and so on. So we have to follow along with that. This is being worked on again in across the 2 campuses. And as of today, I cannot tell you exactly when it would be rolled out, but I can maybe within a week, we can give you a more definitive answer.
Very good. And on that returning to campus in that mode or that vein, there are instructors who may not have reliable access to internet in order to teach online. What supports will be provided to help those instructors? Can they go to campus to do their work? And as well, what about those who cannot go to campus if they can't secure childminding for their children in the fall semester at least?
Mm-hmm. This relates to the previous question. So, all the work from home, the return to work, etc., depends a lot on the childcare and schooling, right? So that's one of the big constraints that people have. So in the question, the first part, that I don't have adequate technology, so can I come to campus and do my work, right? So what I said in the beginning is, these cannot be our individual decisions. Like with the research resumption, the decision is decentralized as to, what kind of research resumption is necessary. But then we have to consider everything in a campus-wide way to see that at any given time, our campus remains safe with the number of people who are there. Because, again, the principle is none of us are safe if everybody's safe. So if there are issues which prevent you from doing your work or prevent you from coming to campus, there is a framework of accommodations, which again, with the assistance of your academic leadership and deans, can be looked at as to how an individual faculty member can or need to be accommodated. But the overall principle of the public health guidelines on campus have to be respected, with a prioritization that we will arrive at as to who needs to have access to campus at what time. So there is no, like most questions, there's no simple yes or no answer. But I don't know, Heather, are there any particular technological support we're thinking of for faculties, or maybe we need to put that on our radar actively?
By technological support, Ananya, do you mean sort of upgrade of internet connection, or technology support as in how do I push the right buttons at the right times?
So I don't know. Well, let's take this offline, and maybe we need to discuss both in your working groups to see what kind of support faculty might need under specific circumstances, which cannot be accommodated, but may need some other kind of help. Yeah.
All right, we have a question regarding the FCCS Faculty Council discussions about teaching in winter term 1 have shown that a majority of faculty members would prefer to teach online to ensure the safety of students and faculty. Could you tell us whether the decision to deliver undergraduate and graduate courses online will be made by faculties, departments, and or faculty members?
So I don't know the exact decision. I will get it back to Bryce, but the normal process of academic decision making will happen in faculties. But then that has to be worked on very carefully with the rest of the campus planning team, with the rest of the planning of the campus, so that all of us are together safe about what we are making happen on campus. So will it be done, will the decision be taken by individual faculties or faculties, or there was a third thing? Well, all of us together. There can't be one ultimate decision maker. So Bryce.
Yeah, I agree, Ananya, with your analysis. And in our faculty, we were just discussing this as Virginie's relating. And what we're asking is for what we're more or less expecting is that all instruction is going to be online for term 1. And if instructors have a particular case and a particular situation, course, and so on, that they can make that case via the department heads up to the dean, and then we'll make a decision that way. I'm not speaking for my colleague deans, but I think that's the sensible way for us to do it in our unit.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow on Bryce. It's exactly the same structure for us. I mean, the heads need to work with their faculty members on what the expectations for the course are, what needs to be done, how it satisfies the learning outcomes. And then if there's a scenario where those learning outcomes aren't consistent with online delivery, we can have a discussion at the faculty level and then up to the provost level if need be. But the expectation generally is, at this point in time, we are online where at all possible.
Very good. Thanks, Gordon, Bryce, and Ananya. So the next question is around the UBCO calendar language on exams. Dan Keyes has pointed out that the language was last updated in 1990 and includes language regarding restricting smoking in the exam halls. So it is pretty old. Would the Provost be happy to guide the Okanagan Senate in revising this policy, considering the context of exam conditions under global pandemic conditions that accommodate students in different time zones with different disabilities?
Yes, of course. I didn't know that. I didn't know about that. That we were all dated by our calendar language. So absolutely, thank you for pointing that out.
Very good. Another question: in terms of creating online social and emotional support, including a sense of community for first-year students, domestic and international, can upper-level peer mentors provide year-long mentorship beginning in Create and Jumpstart?
So I'll give it to Michelle and Heather.
Yes. So yes, we're already talking about that, looking at that. We've done that in the past in an in-person environment, and we're looking at now how can we do that. And an important consideration is our upper year students haven't necessarily been through this and might not necessarily be able to mentor new students on an online learning environment and supporting them in that way. So I think our discussions start today and again tomorrow with different cross-campus groups to figure out how can we form these communities of students that can support other students through what presumably is going to be a bit bumpy in terms of academic learning, and creating that connection and integration so that when they do come to campus, they feel that the transition might be a little bit smoother. So absolutely, yeah, we're already working on that. And that's exactly the place that we usually start, is in Jumpstart and Create.
So there's a bit of a related question. What overlap, if any, do you anticipate from the peer technology assistants and the rovers between student support roles and programs in your area, Michelle?
So Heather and I have been talking about this, where those meetings that are occurring around student supports are later today and then tomorrow. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of overlap. I think having a strong awareness of what's going on is important, but I don't know that we're going to see a lot of overlap between that. But Stephanie actually is going to be in those meetings later, so we can talk more about that.
So I just wanted to raise one general question. What we are hearing a lot, and this is not only for us, universities going online in general, that the online teaching will provide a part of the university experience. It's the most important one, arguably, but nonetheless, all of the other social connections, leadership, etc., students are not going to get. So if it's, I don't know that we can resolve that entire problem for one term, and because we're hoping that there'll be normal life at some stage. But it may be worth thinking about if there are any signature activities that we can offer to our students which help in those directions. So whether it's leadership, whether it's social connection, etc. And any ideas that you might have, please feel free to reach out to me. I would very much like to see something special that we can do for our students to enhance their experience during this term one.
Thanks for that. Would faculty members be eligible to participate in, or at least have access to, material from the training being provided to learning design interns? It seems the training sessions and the materials would be valuable as learning and or even as refreshers for interested faculty members.
So Heather.
That is a delightful question. I'm glad people are as excited about that program as I am. The training really is designed for the graduate students. It is kind of to echo signature experience for the graduate students, but there will be some similar content and related content involved in the online teaching program that we're working on. And so I would encourage faculty members to get involved with the online teaching program. We can certainly provide things like reading lists and that sort of thing out of the LDI program, but it is kind of graduate student focused.
Very good. And given the challenges of procuring online exams, we have to follow the question here as it's moving around on my screen. Given the challenges of procuring online exams, is UBC open to instructors replacing written exams with oral exams which are a form of examination that is very common in the European academic environment?
I think, again, this is an academic decision. It will depend on the course, on the faculty, on the student, on the group. So I don't know that there can be a campus-wide decision, but if faculties want to proceed with something like this, we'll have to look at if there are any sort of broader issues that, so student, any broader campus level issues that we need to consider. But I'm just wondering, do any deans want to answer this? Has this come up in any of the faculties? I guess
it hasn't come up in any of the discussions that we've had in Barber. In principle, it could be a very effective way to engage in final assessments, but again, it depends on the nature of the discipline. And of course, it would require assurances that all students would be treated fairly through that process, and appropriate accommodations be made. But again, it's going to be dependent upon program and feasibility, frankly. Can't do it for 800 students in a first-year class, I don't think.
So I have a question. It's a follow-up to an earlier question, and it's about reliable internet access. So there may be people that are instructors, for example, that don't have a reliable internet access at home. They're teaching they need to teach online. Instructors and students who did all their work on campus to get internet access, to access Canvas, conduct library searches, etc. This is Shirley Chow. She points out there are many places in the central Okanagan that have spotty to very poor or no internet access. Mm-hmm. So that adds further context to a question about internet access provision for people and access to being on campus. Are there any further thoughts about the need to come to campus if they don't have access?
Yeah, so I think so far we have focused this technology access question more on students. But if it is a question for instructors as well, then maybe I will discuss with the deans and because we have to figure it out at the level of the faculty, how widespread it is, how many people might need the support, and then we can design something similar for support. But I need to have a sense of the specifics and the scale before I can actually address the issue. Yeah.
Well, it certainly will form part of that matrix and decision-making about the facilities, the physical space capacities, and the numbers of people we expect to be using them at any given time. Mm-hmm. A question for Michelle. Can you tell us a bit more about the Okanagan Action Network Chair and his or her role?
I'm just texting Melissa Feddersen for an answer to that. So,
okay.
But Melissa Feddersen and Amanda Svoboda are the chairs of that. I can't speak to specifically what their roles are in terms of reference or what that might look like, Joan. But Amanda and Melissa are the leads on that. So I would recommend connecting with them. I'm sorry, I don't know the precise details of that.
Very good. Another question in terms of examinations. There are issues with accessing Proctorio in countries that restrict access, for example, China, and as such, accommodations need to be made for those students, or Proctorio cannot be used. Otherwise, it would not be fair to use it for some students and not others. Is there any workaround for this, and are there suggestions for how courses are being planned?
So Heather, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is one of those questions like academic integrity that requires some discussion and thought and is on our deep dive list through CTL and others to really investigate. Vancouver is in a similar situation, investigating some options. So I've been in a lot of contact with them. And I think this is going to become a bigger cross-campus discussion around assessment. I hate saying stay tuned. I like to be able to have an answer, but this is one of those ones that is in discussion right now. And I would expect to have some more information. I think that's from Shirley coming out. We're working on it right now.
Another question around course delivery. If we're going to use an asynchronous delivery, will we be given a time slot in the formal course schedule?
So the course schedule, I know Fred may be somewhere in the ether, but we may not be able to find him right now. So this course schedule is developed according to the request from the faculty, right? So I know that yesterday when we met with the deans, this came up about how courses now need to be scheduled if everything is going to go online, and some changes would be required. So I would say that if this is a question coming from an instructor or faculty member, talk to your academic head or deans to see what would be the best request made. So for this term, it would be, once the schedule is done, it's hard to make changes because we are not in a normal circumstance. But if there is something particularly needed for the course and the student success and the faculty, we will try to do that. But it has to come from the faculty.
Bryce?
Yeah, so my understanding from the enrollment services folks is that the quote unquote normal timetable is going to be delivered very, very shortly. That will have a time slot and date for all scheduled classes for the fall. And that the understanding is that if instructors wish to move from asynchronous to asynchronous delivery, that's something that can be kind of self-organized within the context of the class itself. And so, everyone will get a schedule, it will be 11 o'clock on Tuesday or whatever. And then as you're working with your students and you want to sort of blend synchronous and asynchronous or whatever, that's something that instructors can do on their own, but that they'll be doing so from within the context of an initially scheduled class.
And I've been given permission to speak. It's Fred here. Everything that Bryce says is exactly correct. We are going to give the faculties and the department heads the opportunity to tell us that if something is asynchronous, that we will release the time, that we will remove the time that has been allocated at this point. But we're asking that they consider that with great caution, because once we remove the time, then it's gone. And there's a very good chance we won't be able to reserve that same time at a future date. So we are not going to be removing those time reservations on the courses up front, only on request, and please consider those requests carefully.
Great. Thanks very much, Fred, and Bryce as well. And Anya, could you speak to whether all graduate classes will be held in person and who makes the decision, considering this in the context of international students who may not be able to get study visas?
Yeah, so, so again, how graduate courses are going to be taught will have to be determined in the programs and faculties, right? There is some interest in having some graduate courses face-to-face, but there are 1 million considerations before we can do that. The most important one is the equity of the student, which is what you're raising, that if a course is taught face-to-face for whatever reason, the student is international somewhere else. So the international students can take courses online. There are some caveats. The immigration practices will not stop you from taking courses. But the question of the classroom experience, when some students are not taking online and some students are, that is an issue that instructors have to consider. But from what I've heard so far is a lot of graduate courses will also be offered online. And then some which are much more difficult to offer online because of pedagogical reasons or learning outcome reasons, they are currently under discussion. But the decision will have to be made by the instructors and the programs and the faculties. And then it has to be all rolled up again to the campus-wide planning exercise to see how it rolls out in terms of presence on campus. And remember, this is the courses. There's also an active ongoing discussion on the resumption of research and who needs to be on campus for that. So all of this has to be coordinated.
Are we working on a range of existing and new training programs? This is perhaps a question related to the Center for Teaching and Learning. We're working on a range of existing and new programs for a greater number of and perhaps more experienced set of teaching assistants so that they can appropriately address student learning in this changed virtualized setting.
Heather.
My favorite question is the kind of question where I can just say, yes, we are. And yes, we are. So there is more information that will be coming shortly about that, Mike and others. But I'm excited to say that, yes, we are working on that actively right now.
Okay, very good. And Heather, one more question. Going back, you mentioned the possibility of the physical access to the library earlier. Will it be possible for students and faculty to order physical books and have that curbside pickup?
More or less, yes. So the traditional curbside model is often that it's delivered sort of to the window of your car or something like that. It probably won't be like that in that it would be delivered right to a vehicle or something, but that it would be entering a space and being able to do a pickup, an in-person pickup. Yes.
Very good. And another follow-on question to one earlier. How will students be informed whether or not their courses are being held with synchronous or asynchronous delivery when they're registering for courses? And how would course conflicts be managed?
Fred and Jay, wherever you are in the ether, because they are the most, I think, this was part of the discussion yesterday.
Right.
And I don't pressure you to have an answer right now, but whatever you can say.
No, it's okay. I don't know if I can remember the full question though. The first point is that the schedule that we are going to be making visible very soon does include times, and at this point it still includes the rooms because we've just finished the process as we originally started, but the rooms will be cleared out. We're not going to remove the times, so that takes care of the conflict question. But what was the rest of the question? What am I not responding to?
So it was about how students would be informed as to whether their courses would be synchronous or asynchronous.
Right. And on that point, if we leave, and I think it's recommended that we leave the times with most of the sections, otherwise we can introduce a lot of potential conflicts for students if instructors start changing their arrangements. So the students would have to, if we leave the times visible and part of the actual schedule, then anything asynchronous would have to be communicated through the instructor. And I would imagine, although I'm guessing, that there would be signals in the Canvas material, assuming that the course is being delivered through Canvas, that there is content that the students can consume according to their own schedule. I'm just guessing that there would be identifiers in the Canvas environment.
Yeah, I wonder if any of the deans want to answer. I think it has to be the instructor for those other schedules. Does anybody want to add to this?
Yeah, I can add something. So part of the concern, of course, with delivering a course asynchronously is the introduction of conflicts. And so, how are exams planned in a way so that there aren't conflicting exams, for example, midterms in other courses. And so having the course with a formal scheduled time can help to address those conflict type concerns. But having the schedule in place is fine, in particular if instructors develop material that can be accessed in an asynchronous manner rather than delivering the course in an asynchronous manner. And so in this way, you can address concerns around students perhaps being in different time zones, accessing the material at their convenience, but also having the flexibility to schedule exams in a preordained format so that you avoid adding stresses to the lives of students by introducing conflicts in their schedules. Ultimately, it's a discussion that should certainly be had between instructors and program coordinators and heads and deans where appropriate.
Very good. Thank you, Gino. And Anya, who is working on assessment tools such as doing respond as lockdown browser for multiple choice questions? So thinking about the different ways that assessments can be done.
Heather, did you want to take that? I know that I'm not working on assessment tools, but Heather may have a better answer. And then again, this is so course specific and pedagogy and discipline specific. I would think that the main agents here would be faculty, smaller faculty heads, deans, etc. Yes, Heather.
I think at the risk of just referring back to sort of the same issue around Proctorio and access to some of those educational technologies. And we really do need to do a bit of a deeper dive into which of those technologies we need them more now in some ways, or alternatives to them. And so this goes back to the idea of sort of a group that's going to need to discuss assessment writ large and what are some of the options in terms of supported educational technologies for that. So I'm sorry, Barb, I don't have a specific answer about that specific technology, except to say that we will do some more investigating what are the best educational technologies and the most available to use, and what are alternatives to some of the technologies that are unavailable in certain areas, geographies, what have you.
Okay, and Anya, I'm going to go back to another question about internet access because it is still on the list and it's being voted up.
Right.
Specifically about instructors that don't have internet access and how they're going to teach online courses. What kinds of accommodations can be made to enable them to be able to do that teaching if they don't have internet access?
So I will repeat what I said because what I'm hearing is this is a wider spread concern than is discussed normally, right? So we haven't had probably the challenges were there, but right now it has become indispensable, right? So I would suggest two things. One is, in our planning for faculty supports, we will absolutely put this front and center and see, we'll consult with Vancouver, see what we can do. But what I will need for everybody to do within the faculties is to give me a sense of the nature of the challenges and the scale so that we know how to plan, right? And of course, if an instructor has to deliver a course online and does not have the tools, we will have to address that. I just don't know right now as I said, what is the scale and complexity of the problem, what is needed, and we will address that accordingly. So I definitely need that input.
Very good. So it's definitely on the table for exploring solutions for those individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Another one for you, Ananya. Are you aware of any coordination between UBC and the Okanagan Nation Alliance, the Rural Host Nation Territory Bands, or local Indigenous serving organizations, especially those serving Indigenous peoples, urban Indigenous people in the region, to provide or facilitate support in bridging for UBCO Indigenous students who are high risk for falling further into the cracks or the gaps?
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of discussions going on Indigenous students in general. I just wonder if Ian or Adrian can be found. Because they would be in much better, they could give you a much more direct answer. But I can say this, that the question of Indigenous student success in this atmosphere and what we need to do in the remote learning environment, how we need to work with the partners, that is very much very much a priority for discussion. And, you know, in all our planning for student success, for access to campus, for, you know, transition of progress of students through what Michelle was talking about retaining our existing students. This is is front and center, that what are those specific things we need to do to make sure that our Indigenous students can come and succeed, and where they are in their particular stage now, what kind of support they need. But in terms of working with our partners, I'm just wondering if Ian or Adrian can be found somewhere. If not, I will prepare a response and certainly bring it to the next town hall or put it in my newsletter.
Very good. I see that we have Adrian Vidan, the Director of Aboriginal Programs and Services here. Adrian, would you like to speak?
For sure, yes, thank you. Our Aboriginal student advisors have been working really closely with Indigenous current students, but also incoming and prospective students. And because our Indigenous student body is quite diverse, both from the region here, but also across the country, the advisors have been working really closely with students and their communities. So their communities might not be here in the Okanagan Nation territory. They might be members elsewhere, but those education coordinators have been communicated with, and we will be continuing to work closely as we come closer to the start of the first term, working with our community partners to ensure that Indigenous students receive the support they need.
Great, thank you, Adrian.
And our Indigenous student acceptances are slightly higher. They're about 3% higher than last year, which I was very happy to see.
That's encouraging. Very good. Another technology question, perhaps related to the Center for Teaching and Learning. What is the backup plan if a class dies in the middle of delivery, even asynchronously? How do instructors troubleshoot those kinds of issues in real time?
I'm not taking that one. But Heather, did you want to respond? Or
that's a nightmare. That sounds horrible, and I'm terrified in reading it. But I think what I might say is that Canvas actually has a fair bit of resiliency. So that doesn't mean it would never happen. I completely appreciate that. It is more resilient in this way, being cloud-based, than Blackboard Connect was in the past. So I'm optimistic. There is an ongoing plan for help desk hours, definitely, through the CTL. And I am hopeful that our learning technology rovers will actually be somewhat helpful in terms of being able to troubleshoot in situ if that's necessary in situations. Of course, this is a danger, technical problems all of the time, and I think we'll just do our very, very best to use that built-in resiliency and try to make sure there are as many backups as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. A little bit of a pedagogy question. I'm concerned about identifying students to engage in research opportunities and other out-of-the-classroom academic experiences for which in-person classes are often an effective recruitment and evaluation opportunity. Are there any thoughts about how to effectively facilitate getting students into out-of-class opportunities?
Well, I think what we know that we need, I think it was a little bit in Michelle's presentation, that some of the service learning, community service, there are lots of, well, not lots, but several virtual internships in place. I know that some students are getting those kinds of opportunities, but I'm not, is that the question? How can students access opportunities, or how can faculty members engage students in their own research projects? Is that the question?
And I believe there's a lot of
identifying students to engage in research opportunities and other out-of-class academic experiences.
Okay.
If I could put a plug in for the job board, that would be one of the ways that the faculty could reach students. If you have a student that you want to engage in your research, you could put a volunteer position or a paid position on the UBC Okanagan job board with a brief job description. Students can read it there and they can apply to your position. It doesn't offer you necessarily those evaluative components that you spoke about in the question initially, but you can certainly screen the student after they apply.
Okay.
Okay. Another question for Heather. When considering various technologies for holding exams, could consideration be given, also be given to how to hold midterms? This question is also relevant to the issue of how we signal the synchronous portions of our classes.
Short answer to that question again, yes. We can definitely give consideration to that. I think, it's clear we need to pull people together to have this conversation and then try to provide some outputs from that conversation. So I will make sure that that's included as part of the discussion points in the group that we pull together.
Okay, and we have a question specifically for you, Fred. One of the dangers of checking in. Question is, when will departments be able to enter or submit changes, additions, or cancellations to their ed plans?
Yeah, we just reviewed that with the faculties yesterday. We are about to make the initial schedule available for viewing in the next day or two, and we're just talking about a process for receiving any adjustments to the schedule. And we've already sent a message to the deans earlier today to that effect, just to talk about the process we want to use, and we would like to coordinate those requests through the department heads, through the deans, working with our office, because we wouldn't be able to deal with a bunch of independent messages coming through at this stage. There's only a few weeks left before we have to publish a schedule to the students. So we're trying to go through it in a very structured, orderly way over the next 3 weeks and through the faculty offices. But those opportunities will be there.
Great, thanks very much. Is there anything being done to get faculty teaching classes access to course TAs before September? And if yes, what is happening and when might we expect to be able to start working with TAs?
I'm so glad the deans are on the panel. Whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, I haven't spoken yet, so maybe I think I should take it. Thank you very much, Nanya, for conducting this session. Yeah, so we already started the process actually in our school. So that's exactly the idea. I think we are learning on the way how we need to engage our TAs. So we started the process much earlier as we used to do. And exactly the idea is the same, that professors and instructor might need help from TAs a little bit early. So it's in the process now, at least in our school. We have started this process. So I'm not sure about other faculties, and I will ensure our instructors in our school, they will have access.
Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah, go ahead, Gino.
Okay, thanks, Bryce. It's similar in Barber. We've started the process by reaching out to the heads and asking about what the anticipated needs will look like, and we're currently preparing that. The hope, of course, is to simultaneously provide support for graduate students and others who might be out of work this summer and are in desperate need of income, while at the same time supporting faculty members in the development of online courses. So in progress. Go ahead, Bryce.
Yeah, everything that Gino and Ron have both said. The additional kind of question mark is around, how many of our newly admitted graduate students are going to be accepting our offers and actually coming and registering, and continuing students as well. It does seem to me that it's an expanded funding opportunity that we might be able to make available to students if they start their contracts a little bit earlier and get paid a little bit more than they would for a normal September through December contract. And then that brings up the issue of the contract period and the collective agreement and so on. So these are all kind of considerations that we need to kind of cover off: the funding, the regulation piece, the contract, But I think all of us want to have the assignments made as soon as possible so that faculty and graduate students can begin collaborating under these circumstances a bit sooner than usual.
Ananya, I just want to expand a little bit what Gino just mentioned. Our intention is that this is also an employment opportunity for grad students. So, and we are allocating a little bit more budget this year, making sure that whatever the loss for the students because of the jobs, we can cover those up to some extent as well through TAs.
Back to you, Bud.
Okay, very good. So I don't see a lot of new questions in the question window. But I did have one, just a final question from myself and Anya. I saw a Globe and Mail article earlier this week that was expressing pretty positive news from universities around the summer term enrollments. And we actually were specifically cited as having up about 45% for our campus. And there were some reasons given in the article as to why students might be choosing summer term courses. But how do you think that bodes for the fall and perhaps into the winter term?
Yeah, again, this is something that I would also like to hear the deans on. The way I see it at a campus level is we did not have a lot of offerings until this year. So last year, if you compare our offerings, we have more. And so we are, I think the drop date is May 22, that's tomorrow. So we had about 32% increase in our summer registrations. So the reasons are obvious, that we have expanded offerings. Students want to maximize progress. Other summer opportunities are not abundant, to say the least. So I don't particularly worry about a huge fall in fall registrations because the offerings are expanded, but there may be some. But there may be some students accelerating for the summer and they won't take the courses in fall. But overall, every student is taking 120 credits. So, whether this is just planning over 3 terms or, a blip we will see, we will find out. But I would like to hear from the deans if anybody wants to comment on that, because this is coming up a lot in the planning, that don't get excited about summer because it's all going to disappear in the fall. Any comments on that?
Yeah, so we in FCCS, the experiment for us this summer is that we're offering courses for the first time, really, that we tend not to offer in the summer. So courses beyond sort of requirements, first-year courses, and those all filled. I have asked the instructors in those courses to just ask those students why they're taking these classes. I think that's the most reliable information that we're going to be able to get on this point. I'm not sure that I trust some of the other explanations that have been offered. And I think the students themselves might be able to tell us, because some of those students are first-year students, some of them are fourth-year students. There's a real range in our current classrooms, and we really should do everything we can to find out and help us try to understand if there's a pattern here that will extend into what is increasingly looking like an online year.
Yeah, so I think definitely that enrollment is much higher than our regular years. There could be many reasons. Students are not finding jobs, could be one thing. Students want to take some courses so that they have reduced workload in the future. There are all possibilities. One thing which we have also, we did a little bit of survey as well with our students of third-year courses, and we try to rank, and we realized one of the courses which we never offered in summer, we are planning to offer it a third-year course now. So we reached out to students. So students showed some interest to take those courses. And in our regular summer terms, we will never have this kind of class sizes. But I think one of the main reasons what I really see is that student wants to reduce the workload in the regular semester. That's definitely a motivation.
Can I also add that I don't have more evidence, but I do think it's interesting that at a time of such change and turmoil really that's been experienced as the last few weeks, that students are choosing to enroll more in the summer, and maybe there is something much more general that we need to be aware of here to do with accessibility of our programming in multiple entry points and so on, in a way that there's something we can do better for students going forward more generally.
Very good. Thanks everyone for that. We had a couple more questions, so let's go straight to those. The first one is a short question. For people who want to visit or work on campus, will a safety measure such as mask wearing be put in place? Ananya, you're on mute.
Yeah, so I don't know if Jill is on the call, but once we have, or Shelley, but once we have any plan, it will involve a whole range of safety measures. So maybe Gord wants to add to that. So for example, Gord was talking about the necessity to have nursing labs. So I'm sure that will come with a lot of protocols. Gord, did you want to add, or Mike Burgess is also on the line. Did you want to add on what kind of protocols we would expect to see?
Yeah, sure. I mean, on a campus level, we're still waiting for final guidelines to come from WorkSafe BC. So everything we do would have to be, at very least, consistent with the WorkSafe BC guidelines. And second, then as we get those, there will be absolutely procedures for all the occupation of campus. This is both research we're starting on now and otherwise in the future. And all of those are being worked on, from how to schedule spaces, which stairwells are up stairwells and which stairwells are down stairwells, right through to cleaning. So all of those pieces are being worked on right now, but we can't say for sure until we actually get the guidelines from WorkSafe. As far as the specific case that Ananya brought up of nursing, in that case, we've got a working example from Vancouver for how they've been doing it over the summer. In that case, they will be in full PPE in accordance with both the WorkSafe guidelines, but also consistent with what healthcare workers in the field are actually using.
Mm-hmm. Mike, did you want to add anything? And I have one thing to add after Mike.
I see Jillian's here as well. The point to remember about things like masks is they protect other people from you. They don't protect you from other people. And washing of hands and the other precautions are far more important for self-protection. But as Gord said, whenever we've got regulations from the public health officer or WorkSafe, we have to comply with those. So those will be the groundwork. And from there, people need to make individual choices based on their own comfort levels.
So one thing I forgot to answer, Bud, is the government has actually asked for a sector-by-sector plan on protocols. So our sector, the education sector table, Phil Barker and Ainsley Carey are both on that sector table, and they're working on this plan development, which will eventually have to signed off by WorkSafe BC, and they will be at the principal level, as Mike said, and then we would have to work out our campus level specifics about what we would do. So yeah, so that work is also ongoing.
Right. I see that we have Jill Henderson, Executive Director for Human Resources at UBC Okanagan. Jill, did you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I think Gord covered most of the points, and Michael too. It is a case of following advice which changes over time. And just today, the federal government has come out with some clarified guidelines about mask wearing. So, we'll be taking those things into consideration in the detailed planning that will take place for each phase of the resumption of services.
Very good. So we have one more question. Many of the class changes and implementation of changes fall directly on individual faculty members and require faculty member time. Further, much of the support in order to make these changes requires faculty member time. For example, attending this session, reading this material, work with these resources. Can you provide some guidance regarding whether where this time might come from and what the institution is doing to protect faculty members' time, work-life balance, and mental health?
So there's lots of questions in there. So the initial the initial question about faculty members' time and the balance between teaching and research. So those questions of workload that are again dealt with at the department and faculty level. And for as far as I'm concerned, whatever supports the deans would ask for, we would look at that. In terms of mental health support, again, is Jill still here? There is actually, I understand from our VPHR and Jill that there are a lot of mental health resources being.
Yes.
Yeah, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, there are a range of resources, and we have a kind of fact sheet on that. So, I mean, if people go on to the HR website, they can look for links to the mental health resources that are available. And I know right now, for example, in the planning that's taking place for research resumption is there's a kind of one-pager that we're going to make sure that all the principal investigators have to provide as support to both themselves and to folk who are returning to campus. But there are lots of resources available and lots of resources online. If anyone has any specific questions, they can direct them to our department.
Okay, another question regarding the mode of teaching. Looking forward, would UBC consider a hybrid model, which is students rotating and attending classes in person in combination with online delivery? For example, in a class of 40, 10 students show up physically per class.
Mm-hmm. So again, all of those models are being considered. I mean, there's a lot of proposals on the table. Apart from the specifics of the pedagogy and the discipline question, this equity to students is something we really have to consider. So if we can do this equitably, without presenting additional financial challenges to students, if that's only one course, do they have to be in Kelowna and take on a lease just to be in a class, every other week or something like that? How does that impact students? And if they say that we cannot do that, then the experience that we are providing is that equitable, can we accommodate the different needs? So this is a real challenge in planning, where the disciplinary and the pedagogical needs need to be balanced with the reality of the students' needs, which are diverse, and then the public health guidelines, which we all need to adhere to, right? So nothing is, there's nothing that we have ruled out, but what at my level or at the campus level, what we're trying to establish is certain principles with which all of us can work, so that, and using all our, collective agreements, or all of the Senate policy, board policy, all of the institutional resources that we have to provide the most equitable and best learning and teaching framework, right? This is not going to be easy, but that's the work. And then going back to the question just before that, attending a session like this takes time. Absolutely. And we struggle with how much of these events to hold, and how much to just send you written information, how much to not bother you with information. And we're all struggling with that. The phase at which we are now, it's very important to give you information and to seek your feedback. Otherwise, it will all seem even more alienating, that information and decisions are just coming at us and we have no way of providing input before the decision is made, right? So this is the kind of virtuous cycle that we are trying to put in place right now. So the specific pedagogical discussions on, the rotating students and so on, again, they have to be discussed primarily in the programs, the faculties with the deans. But if any trends are emerging that this is in fact a great way to offer courses in discipline X, then whatever campus-wide or more institutional level supports are necessary, we will try to put that together the best we can. That's the approach I'm taking. Tell me, given your pedagogical and disciplinary needs and faculty decisions, what you need, and we will try to see how we can support that.
Great. There is another question. Would the faculty be willing to use the section comments in the course schedule to provide more information about how the courses are being offered or the safety measures for on-campus courses? So more a suggestion than a question, but is that something that could be considered?
Fred and Jay question, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Considered. I sorry to talk over you, Ananya. It can certainly be considered. I think we need to look at how much information are we actually trying to convey through that very contained messaging opportunity. So it depends on how elaborate we want to get in that space, but certainly we can consider doing that, yes.
Very good. And another question about, are students invited to a forum like this one in order to learn about their concerns and needs?
Michelle, can I throw that back to you? Because we've had a lot of discussions on this. Michelle has left? No, I can't see her. Okay, go ahead.
I think that's a great idea, actually. I know that students have had opportunities to connect. There's been presentations, there's been questions back and forth. Students are connecting rapidly. I don't think it's been in a forum like this, although I know recruitment has been offering different presentations. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would say, I don't know what others think about being on doing that.
Yeah, no, I had suggested actually when it first happened that I do something for the students in residences who couldn't leave. I just felt that that was just such a sudden thing that happened. But I think Michelle's team took care of that. But we can certainly, going forward, I have some ideas that I will try to develop for students, then getting faculty and instructors talking about their pedagogy. I think these are things we need to keep doing to, as I said, to bring UBC to our students wherever they are.
Well, just on that note, Ananya, what are your thoughts about doing more of these provost town halls in the near future, or as plans start to gel?
I already gave it in writing in the invite that we would have more town halls. I think even though I cannot see anybody, but I think that we started out with 303 people. We are right after 2 hours. We are still at 230. So I think there is a need for us to have these discussions so that we don't make decisions which are, without input. So yes, we will continue to do them. And I will also, in the newsletter, I also try to cover more things. And I think what I might do in this current situation is send you shorter newsletters, but with some decisions and inputs and decisions I need to make and input we need, or decisions that I have made that you need to know. So that we have a constant ongoing discussion.
Very good. We're closing in on our 2-hour time limit. We've got a few minutes left, but I think I don't see any pressing
burning questions
floating to the top of the list anymore.
So we can end 5 minutes early. That's okay.
It's encouraging to know that we still have 221 people in the session, so we didn't see an afternoon melt as we might have expected after a couple of hours of intense conversation here. So Thank you very much, everyone. To those whose questions I didn't ask in a clear manner, that's on me, not on you, on your questions. So I apologize if I didn't ask your question in the most precise way. But thank you for everyone that took a moment to help answer the questions. We have a lot of minds at work at the university, and it's great to get everyone together in a forum like this. Ananya, did you have any closing remarks?
No, just that I look forward to more town halls. Write to me if you want to. And thank you to everybody, faculty, students, staff, and our community for everything that you're doing in this very difficult time.
Very good. And with that, I'll thank everyone for attending. We'll see you at the next one.